I'm on top of the world, hey. I'm on top of the world, hey. Waiting on this for a while now. Paying my dues to the dirt. I've been waiting to smile, hey. Been holding it in for a while, hey. Take you with me if I can. Been dreaming of this since a child.
Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but I always like my intro song. I'm on top of the world, living on top of the world. I was thinking today when I was just kind of jamming to it, luckily y'all didn't actually see all of that, but I was thinking how we live is to some degree a choice. You know, it's raining today and we could be feeling down and gloomy, but it's a choice. So you have to want to be excited about life and live your best life. Well, hello everybody. I am your host here, Chris Bridges, here on Living on Top with Chris Bridges. And I'm so excited to be back with you. I look forward to doing this on Tuesday, and I'm really thankful for the feedback that I receive from those of you who watch the broadcast. I'm hoping that it's a life-changing event, at least something you're getting out of it. But continue to share with your friends. Let them know that we're here every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and make sure that you're connecting with us and staying connected throughout the week, not just on, here on Living on Top. And you can go to livingontop.info. Those of you also may be watching us directly from Listen Vision Live's website. Welcome, and thank you so much for staying connected and tuning in to us as well. But we do have a Facebook page. I found out today that I actually designed the wrong page, and so that Facebook page site might be changing, but as of right now, going out there, it's facebook.com/LOTCB. So go ahead out there, like our page. So when my social media expert who has told me that I actually put the wrong page up, when he fixes it, then I'll tell you guys as well, and you can stay connected. Also, you can text the word LOT, LOT, to 301-880-0041. That's 301-880-0041, and that'll stay and keep you connected with us as well. So again, thank you so much for being with me today on Living on Top, and let's go right into thanking our sponsors. So our sponsors for the broadcast is Sheehy Ford, right over there in Marlow Heights. Super excited for them. They're actually getting ready to launch, I think next month, their brand new showroom. And so it is beautiful. I've already had my tour. So go on over to Sheehy Ford of Marlow Heights. Give them a call at 301-423-4950. Ask for Paula, who's the GM, or Linda. And if you're looking for a new or used vehicle, and let me tell you, these are my go-to, whether you've got a challenged credit score or whether you're in the 800s. You want to go over and talk to Paula and Linda, and they will make sure that you're in the right car. I don't have to worry about sending folks over there and they put anybody in a car. They will make sure that that's the best deal for you. And then we also want to thank Stewart Financial Services. Mr. Anthony Stewart is the CEO of Stewart Financial Services, where they are a division of American Classic Agency, and these folks are good people. This is a place to go where you want to learn how to get your financial house in order and learn how to leverage life insurance, the new kind that you actually don't have to die to use. And then we want to thank my own company, Credit with Chris, as I'm a sponsor as well of this broadcast. And if you're looking, and I partner with Stewart Financial Services, if you're looking for a complimentary financial review where we do a dive into your credit, make sure that that's straight. That's what we're going to be talking about today, as a matter of fact. Then just simply go to the website, creditwithchris.com, and register for your free your complimentary assessment, and we'll chat with you as well. So thank you so much for our sponsors. And right now, we're going to go into our question of the week. As you know, every week on the broadcast, we do a chat with Chris question. So our chat with Chris question today is, what does it mean if I receive an income statement from my creditors? I actually received this a couple of times this week, or was asked this question a couple of times this week. So what are we talking about? An income statement from your creditors is an IRS tax statement. It's usually a 1099. And what that means is your particular creditors or your debtors have written off that debt on their books. And so it's now a charge-off. Normally a charge-off that's just written off, if it's still carrying a balance, which it will, does not mean you don't owe it. So a lot of times people get that confused, and we'll talk about that on another question. But if you receive an income statement from a creditor, that means that they have charged off that debt and they are reporting to the IRS that your income is now more because they take into consideration the amount of that debt. So they've now just increased your income by the amount of debt that they've written off. So if you got a 1099 from one of your creditors, don't get excited thinking that, you don't have to do anything with it and now you don't have to pay the debt. You need to make sure that you include that amount, that 1099 amount, in your tax return. So when you are filing your taxes, you need to take that piece of paper with you to your tax professional and make sure that they include it, because basically that's now an increase in your income. If you got any questions, the good reason why you need to register for a complimentary assessment, and I'll go over that, or go talk to your tax professional. And by the way, happy pre-tax day. So we all know that tomorrow is April the 15th. Take a deep breath, sigh for those who have not gotten their things in order. It's not too late. Make sure you reach out to a tax professional and make sure that you know what you need to do if you need to get an extension. Okay? So that's our question for the day. If you received a tax income statement from your creditors, make sure that you're including that in your tax return, because that is increased income. And you want to make sure that you are accounting for that, because trust and believe, the IRS got a copy of that as well. Okay, so let's go into our broadcast for today. Today we are going to be talking about or answering the question, what's credit got to do with it? Let me show you this real quick. With it, because I'm not Tina Turner, but credit has a lot to do with everything financial in this country. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What's credit got to do with it? So first of all, before I kind of break down, some information about credit, I thought we'd go back and actually talk about some history. Most people don't even realize the whole history of credit. And if you go back and think about it, maybe with your ancestors, with your grandmother's grandmother, they didn't know anything about credit. They didn't have credit. It just did not exist. And so we'll go back real quick before we go into this presentation. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the history. So back in the 1950s, I think around 1956, there were these two guys named Fair and Isaac, Bill Fair and Earl Isaac. Probably sound a little bit familiar, Fair and Isaac, for Fair Isaac Corporation. And so they kind of came together because prior to that, there was a lot of sort of manual evaluation about credit worthiness. And credit worthiness simply is, what's the likelihood that someone's going to default on a debt? At the end of the day, that's really what it is evaluating our risk. And it's really looking at our history to determine whether or not we're going to be good on the debt in the future. So these guys kind of came together because prior to them, again, it was done more manually. They didn't have automated systems. They didn't have ways to communicate it in a more global kind of way like we do today. So they got together and said, you know what, it would probably be great if we can consolidate and bring all this information together so that banks and lenders and other people who had the money can just determine who's the best risk or risk levels to be able to give. So they came up with this, and it's really funny. They actually originally went out and said, tested the pool with a bunch of lenders and said, hey, would this be something that would be helpful to you? And not a lot of people, I think just a handful or just a few actually said yes. Imagine that, right? Everybody today evaluates and uses FICO or the Fair Isaac Corporation's model. But back then, it's just like anything. And when it was something's first brought up, we're like, oh, no, that'll never work. nobody's going to ever do that. And then look at what happens. So back in the 1950s, they came up with this model. Well, it wasn't until the early 2000s that they actually passed the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and then also passed the law that allowed us to get access to our credit report. And if you think about it, that's not that long ago. Prior to that, we actually didn't have access to look at our credit report as a consumer. So all this information had been going out there about us, but we never could see it and determine if it's actually accurate. So credit in itself has been around for a bit, but not the way it is today. It hasn't been in place for that long. So I wanted to kind of just start by telling you guys that. So, right now today, we know that credit is used for just about everything financial, whether or not we want to buy a house, whether or not we want to buy a car, whether we can even buy it, or let alone how much we're going to pay for it. The jobs that we have, about 50% of our employers are now evaluating our credit. So if you're doing, and most people now are doing online applications, there's some preliminary questions right there on the online application. And if you can't answer it, or you have the number that's below their minimum guidelines, that's it. There's no more discussion about you coming to work for that company. So our employers are checking our credit. Utility companies, of course, we know wireless companies. Now, they'll give you a phone, but you may have to put down a deposit. Where we live, where we rent, everything, as well as, our property and casualty insurance. So if you're thinking about, the insurance that you're paying for maybe driving your car, you may not realize it, but about 30% of that premium could be based on your credit. And so the good thing about that is, let's say in the past, if you've had credit challenges and then you've worked to improve it, but you've never done a rate evaluation or comparison, this might be a good time to do so. Now, on the flip side, if you had good credit when you first got your rate from your service provider, your insurance company, and now your credit's kind of had little dings on it, stay put. Don't go evaluate, because this ain't the time. So keep where you are, especially if you have a good rate. But you need to know that your credit is used to evaluate you in a number of different ways and across a number of different industries. So that's kind of a little foundation about what is credit, the history of credit, and of course those federal laws that I talked about, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's that law that determines what people can say about us, what type of information is being reported, how will the creditors be held responsible for the information, how we can access our credit report. All of that is around these federal laws. Laws are there for our protection as consumers. If we don't take a minute and learn more about, and maybe I'll do a segment in a broadcast in the future about and break down all of the laws as it relates to credit, 'cause I think that'll be very helpful. I often say when we know better, we can do better. So we do need to understand about the federal laws as it relates to credit. But anyway, so listen, that's the history. These two gentlemen came together and created the Fair Isaac Corporation, which is today by far the largest known and widely used credit model or credit scoring model that's out there. It's not saying it's the only one. FICO is not the only one, but it's the most widely known and used. And every so often, they're actually just launched last year, FICO version 9. So even within the FICO model, there are 9 different versions. I just looked at a credit report the other day that had on one report between two bureaus had FICO 4 and FICO Classic 5. So they just announced a launch last year 9. It'll be a bit before we see that, okay? But just know that that's the model that's most commonly used to evaluate our credit. All right, now I've got some information to share with you with this presentation. What's credit got to do with it? So let's go through this right now. So let's go to the next slide. So you all know, I already told you who I am. You all know that I am Chris Bridges, but I had to take a minute and just do a little, selfie promotion for my baby. So this is Taylor Bridges. She's actually home today. She's not feeling well. So everybody wish Taylor to get well. And I love you. Shout out to you, babe. This is my mini me. As you see, she is very comfortable on the studio at Fox 5. And so we're really just excited to have. Normally she's in here with me, but she's not. Taylor has nothing to do with my talk today. I just figured I'd have opportunity to just brag on my daughter. Well, let's go to the next slide. We're going to actually share. That's the only one I want to brag on. I can't talk about Taylor without talking about my granddaughter. That is my granddaughter, Robin, from Easter. Again, nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about today, just a little promotion of my children today, but super excited and lucky to be her grandmother. That's the apple of my eye, my other little me. All right, let's get into the real serious conversation. So who is this conversation for today? Listen, again, I've kind of gave you a little history about credit, and if you're not sure, if you need to stay tuned to this broadcast, no matter where you are on the range, and the scoring range depends anywhere between 300 and 850 or 350 and 800, depending on the range. No matter where you are, you need to still learn how to either build, restore, maintain, and properly protect your credit. So if you've got a social security number in the United States and owe someone something, this talk today is for you. All right. Does this look familiar to anybody? Do you find yourself spinning on your financial wheel, just going nowhere, wondering, how I'm going to get my kind of, what do they say? You have more month than money at the end of the year. Well, one of the things that I usually talk about as it relates to credit is the credit is affected by our ability to pay. So we got to deal with that alone. How is our ability to pay? And at that point, you determine what's the impact. Our credit score is nothing more than the result of how we're managing our money. So if we're finding ourselves on this financial wheel, what do we need to do to get off of it? What is your motivation? I love this slide. What's your motivation? How bad do you want it? Credit is important, but how important is it to you? What is it about having good credit that is going to be important to you? That's a question that only you can really answer. Let me tell you about this 100-man money story. I looked at this and I thought, this is really a problem in this country. So if you look at this pie chart, you'll see that 56%, the largest percentage in blue, are Americans here in this country at the age of 65. Most of us potentially are on some type of government assistance, relying on family or some type of charity. That's a lot of people. And why is that? It could be a number of reasons. It could be that we just didn't properly plan. It could be life event. I don't know, but that's a large percent of people. We really need to do something about that. Now, 25% have already passed away. That's another problem because we should be in the 120 club. So another 25% are people who have already passed away at age 65. 11% are people that are still working. 11% of our population are still working. These are the people that are a little bit older, our awesome seasoned saints that are greeting us in the Walmart or the Target and those stores. They're not there because they just love us. They're there because they don't have an option. They are still having to work. And then 3% are financially stable. Well, I take that back. I'm sorry. 8%. 8% are financially stable. Only 8%. Where do you want to be? I want to be in that 8%, not in the other 92. So we need to do some work. Let's just make sure that we're all focused on being in that 8%. Typically, when it comes to credit, there are really two battles. Battle between our income and our expenses. I mentioned before that credit is affected by our ability to pay. And so if our income is less than our expenses, we're going to probably have a problem. That means somebody ain't getting paid. So we need to make sure that either our income is increased or our expenses are decreased. It's really just that simple. So let's talk today about what's important about credit. What's credit got to do with it? It's really these three things as it relates to our credit and what people are looking at. It's our character, our collateral, and then, of course, our credit. So if we're applying for something and wondering what are they evaluating, they're evaluating these three things: our character, our collateral, and then, of course, our credit. So let's break these things down. So our character, are you trustworthy? What defines us to be trustworthy? How are we managing our debt? Are we paying our debt on time? Are we getting into debt that we really can't afford to maintain? Are we living within our means? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, you know what? And then I'm digressing a little bit because I had something to show you all. I might have to come back and show it another day. I had a video to show. Well, let's go to the next slide and we're going to break this down since I don't have the video. All right. So we talk about living within your means. Here's a couple of things that you might want to look to do. Number one, start off with writing out a budget. Again, credit is affected by our ability to pay. So how do we make sure that we can pay our bills? We need to know what are our bills. So start off by listing our income and our expenses, kind of making a simple spending plan. So look at what are you spending out every month to make sure that everybody's getting paid. Separate your needs from your wants. Okay, separate your needs from your wants. And of course, divorce yourself from the opinions of others. This really has nothing to do with living within your means as a particular tactic or strategy, except for it has everything to do with what you believe or your perception of what other people think about you. So sometimes we spend money in places that we have no business spending money in because we're worried about what other people are thinking about us. Now, one thing as well is save and use cash. So a lot of times when we use our credit cards and we're out, credit cards don't hurt as much to use as much as cash does. So try going out to lunch with your friends and offering to pay for everybody and having to pull cash out of your wallet or your purse. But yet you probably will do that, or at least think you can offer to do that if you're using your credit card. Credit cards, we don't think as much about where that money is coming and going because we're swiping. So start thinking about using cash a little bit more, and then you'll see if that cash is flowing in and out of your pocket more than you need it to be. And then, of course, build an emergency fund. Everyone should have 3 to 6 months. I'm right here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. We're right here where the governments, the largest population of government employees. And we know that the government has been having some issues over the last couple of years. And for the government to shut down for a few weeks or 30 days and drive people to have to either think or file for bankruptcy is a problem. That means that we did not have an emergency fund. We did not have money to go to in case of an emergency, in case our income was interrupted. So we make sure that you've got 3 to 6 months. Have at least a month. If you can't get 3 to 6, start with a month and then work your way to 2 and then 3. But you need to at least have 30 days worth of extra income in case you have a disruption in, your cash flow. And then, of course, make more money. Hey, everybody should have a business and not necessarily a hobby, but have something on the side. Get you a side hustle so that you've got some extra income that's coming in. And then I love this one, sell some stuff. Have a yard sale. The weather is breaking. It's a great time to sell some things. So have a yard sale and make sure that you can, sell. Say your trash is somebody else's treasure. So live within your means and make an adjustment. And then, of course, your collateral. Collateral is simply your assets. What do you have that says about you when you want to go borrow, whether you're borrowing a car, whether or not you're borrowing, or you want to buy money to, buy a home? They're going to want to look at your collateral. Collateral is, the money you have, whether it's your income, whether it's money you've got in bonds or savings or stocks or cash value in life insurance. Where's your collateral? Listen, guys, we've got to have something to our name. We need to increase our net income or our net worth. And the only way that we can do that is by putting something aside or having something available to you. So make sure that when they're evaluating our risk levels, they're looking at our character again. Where, will we pay them back? And then they're looking at our collateral. And then the next one, which is the biggest one we're going to spend time on, is they're looking at your credit. So this is the time to take a quick commercial break because I'm going to come back and break this credit thing down. Let's take a quick break and then we're going to come back and talk about what you should know about your credit score. We'll be right back. over. So when I say take a commercial break, that's just like go get a glass of water and come on back in. I hope by now you will see that today's broadcast is really packed, and I wanted to just share a bunch of information with you about what's important about credit. I had somebody ask me recently, what's really important? What's a big deal about credit? I use cash for everything, and so I had to sort of say, listen, credit gives you options. Credit affords us the opportunity to make decisions. And when you don't have credit, whether or not you just never built credit or your credit is challenged, then you don't have as many options. And so I'm about, opportunities and options. And I believe that those things, when they present themselves, you should want to be in a position that you can take advantage of them. And that's what credit does. So let's break down all about the credit score. If you don't have a credit score that you're pleased with, or if you got a great credit score and you're not sure, how do I maintain it? Because protecting it and maintaining it is vital. So let's talk about that. I mentioned earlier about the credit scoring models, that there are, different models that are out there, and the range is anywhere between 300 and 850. So an 850 credit score is like, you can't get any higher. It's the top of the range. So people always ask me, where should my credit be? Listen, it wouldn't be on the range if it wasn't attainable. So I think everybody should have an 850. Now, but for real, or reality is, if you get your credit to about the mid to upper 700s. So upper 700s is a good sweet spot. Now, you may not have everybody running around showing your credit report to their colleagues, at the car dealer, but an upper 700 credit score will give you pretty much the same financial terms that you would have if you had an 850. So again, you wouldn't be one of the very, 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 very low percentage of people in this country with an 850, but you'd still be looked at as a good risk. And listen, don't worry about when we say credit risk. Everybody is a risk. Oprah Winfrey is a risk. Now, she may not be as big of a risk as I am, but she's a credit risk. Anytime someone gives up their money, there is a risk that they may or may not get their money back. And so don't get caught up on that. We just want to make sure that we're at a better risk so that we can get the best opportunity. So again, that's the scoring model. And then you're probably familiar with these three companies, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So those are the credit bureaus that report information about us. So we told you a little about who FICO is. And FICO is a corporation. It's a company that has created the FICO model. That model is used by the credit bureaus, not all of them, but two of the three, that's used by the credit bureaus to actually calculate our score and then report our information. So listen, we don't owe information to the credit bureaus, right? So Equifax doesn't have a debt. You don't owe Equifax. You don't owe TransUnion. They're just reporting the information that's being told to them. So when I talked to you earlier about, where Fair Isaac, so Fair and Isaac had gotten together and he was evaluating, would this information be helpful? That we gathered this information and then we used that information to calculate a score. Would it be helpful to evaluate risk? And that's basically what they do. So the credit bureaus are just repositories. Now, they are held accountable and governed by the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So that's the law I talked about earlier that determines, what's being said about us, what can they report, when something by law should be removed from our credit report, which, by the way, a little nugget if you're taking notes, that doesn't mean you don't owe the debt. So just because something by law, exceeds the statute of limitations and that negative information is removed, don't think that debt just goes away. It just means that they can't report it to the credit bureaus, okay? And then the other thing you need to know is right now, I mentioned to you in early 2000 that there was a law passed that granted consumers the right to evaluate and to see your own credit report. Every 12 months, you have the right to get a full and complete. And this is the best place to get a complete, meaning detailed, credit report. Some of the other places is not as detailed. Go to annualcreditreport.com. Again, go to annualcreditreport.com and get your free report. I'm stressing free because if you want to see your credit score, then you have to pull out your credit card. It's going to be about $8 per bureau to see your score. But you can get a free report at annualcreditreport.com. Now, if you want to get a free report with your score, there's one place you can go to. It's Credit Karma. Now, Credit Karma is the most widely known, free site that you can go and monitor every month and look at your credit. That's because TransUnion did a really good job at marketing their product. That's right. This is a TransUnion product. So when you go out there, you can see your TransUnion profile. The other bureaus have free products as well. If you want to see more resources, go to my website, creditwithchris.com. Go under programs and you'll see resources, and there's a bunch of information out there where I break down exactly, these places you can get your free report. So make sure that you are entitled to it. Make sure that you get your free report. So let's put that slide back up, and I want to go over that pie chart real quick before we move forward. A lot of people have seen this pie chart. This pie chart breaks down the different components. Now, the the wording might be a little bit small, but you can see those colors, I'm sure. So the largest component of how our score is calculated is payment history. That is, did we or did we not pay our bills on time? Okay. Payment history relates to late payments, collections, charge-offs, judgments, or liens. All of that, bankruptcy as well, all of that falls into this biggest chunk. So don't be surprised where if you miss one payment on an account, you lose so many points. It's because this is the largest component. 35% of our score is based solely on the history of our payments. Okay. This is also a good reason why people who have an 850 credit score have nothing late, no collections, no charge-offs on their credit report. All right. The next largest component is in orange. That is amount owed. This relates to credit card balances. So if you've got credit card balances that are more than 30% of your score, then this is going to be impacted. So credit card balances, and let me go back, I said that wrong. If you have a credit card balance that is more than 30% of your limit, I say this so often, I got that wrong. 30% of your limit. Simple. I want you to think about your credit card. Think about the limit that you have on your credit card. That's how much did the credit card company say you have to spend. And then I want you to just do math. 1/3, you can think about it that way, or 30%. What is that number? So let's say you got $1,000 limit on a credit card, then you cannot carry more than $300 per month on that credit card, or it will start to negatively affect your score. So remember that orange is amount owed, okay? So when your score is calculated, if you do your own or go back and look at your credit card statements, if you're carrying more than 1/3 or 30% of that balance on a monthly basis, that's starting to negatively affect your score, okay? Next largest component. So listen, if you have a credit card that's overextended and you were late, that's 65% that you got potentially a hit for on your score. All right, the next largest section, which is in yellow, is length of credit history. It's 15% of our score. So it does matter. We talk about what's credit got to do with it. It matters when you started establishing credit. So if you just woke up and decided, maybe I'll get an account, then you may have a good positive account, but you may not have as many points potentially as you would have if you had gotten that credit established much sooner. Okay, so simply it's the length of history. How long have you had credit established? So, when you talk about evaluating risk, have you had credit for a while, or did you just start establishing credit recently? So you want to make sure that you've had a credit established for a while. And a good way that you can do that, especially if you're just starting out, a great way that you can ensure that you have a good history of credit is to be added on as an authorized user. I'll pause there for some of you. So an authorized user is where someone else who has an established account with a creditor, and let's define established. I don't mean that they just got one open. I mean that they have a good one open. So they have a credit card that has a high limit, low balance, and never been late. So this only works if it's good stuff. Garbage in, garbage out. Same thing applies to credit. So if you can identify someone that's had credit established for a long period of time and they have a high limit, carrying a low balance, and have never been late, that's a great account to add you on as an authorized user. What a great way for you now to go from no credit to having credit history. Now, I know if you're listening to me, you may be even thinking one or two things. Either I don't have anybody around me that has good credit. If that's the case, we need to change your circle. Or you might be thinking, I have someone, but they're never going to do it because they're not going to want all my jacked up stuff on their credit report. So let me answer those two things, because those are the two objections I usually get. So if you have someone, just know this is not bilateral. So your credit history and profile does not come onto theirs. Only that one account will come onto yours. Okay. So if you find somebody, go ahead and tell them. And usually you want to tell them this in the beginning of the conversation when you're asking them to add you on. You want to say two things. Number one, I don't need the card, so you don't have to physically send the card to me. And don't worry, I'm only going to have this one account and you're not going to have any of mine. Now, again, you have to know people in your circle, but we want to be able to identify at least one. So this is a great way for you to basically borrow or piggyback on somebody else's credit by leveraging them, and then it reports on yours. Now, I said make sure that it's a good account, because it's like co-signing. You know what happens when you co-sign? If you co-sign for somebody and they don't pay the bill, well, then you didn't pay the bill either, right? So it's the same account that's reported on the credit report. So when you do an authorized user account, this works great. However, if they miss a payment, you missed a payment. So one of the other criteria when you're finding someone to add you on as an authorized user, is that they care about their credit more than you do. So you don't have to worry about it. They're not going to miss a payment because they're not going to want anything negatively affecting their credit. A couple of things about authorized users, why I'm spending so much time on it today, is because an authorized user is no inquiry. So you can get an account opened, report it positively, helping you to build credit, getting that extra 15% in your length of credit, getting that extra 35% in having positive credit, and that 30% because now you have low ratios. So you can get all of that, no inquiry. Okay. So it doesn't matter about your current credit profile. You can be added on to somebody else's account regardless of where your credit is. But what a great way to establish credit. Listen, I just turned 49, so I would recommend this to anybody, whether you're 18 just starting out, or whether you're 29, 39, 49, 59, or 69. If you need to build your credit or get your credit restored, this is a great strategy to do so. Okay. So an authorized user account, again, just identify somebody. And as I mentioned, if you can't think of anybody in your circle who has good credit, then we need to maybe find another circle, or send them all over to creditwithchris.com where they can have a complimentary assessment and let me fix everybody and get everybody straight. But let's go ahead, back to the pie chart, and we'll go to the next section. So the green section is new credit. That relates to inquiries. Inquiries simply are when you apply for something or when someone is checking in, that's typically not a hit. So when you apply for credit, that is an inquiry. An inquiry is 10% of your score. Okay. So listen, if your credit is a little bit challenged, this is not the time to apply for the American Express Purple Card. Go talk to American Express when you build that score up a little bit. So don't just run out and see who's going to give me credit. Apply for the things that you basically know you're going to get approved for, and then watch those inquiries. Now, if you're buying a house or buying a car, good news, you can do that as often as you want in a 30-day period. It'll only hit you as one inquiry. You may see multiple inquiries on your credit report, but it's only going to affect you as one. Now, if you go out in 1 month and you apply for a mortgage, you buy a car, and you open up a credit card, that's 3 separate inquiries. So be careful about doing that. All right. And then the last section is type of credit. That's 10% in the blue. It does matter what type of credit that you're carrying. So everybody needs at least one credit card. Okay, this is simply put in this particular section. So if you've got student loans, mortgage, and that's it, and you're like, good, I'm cash and carry for the rest, I don't need a credit card, you're missing out on 10% potential points in your score. So everyone needs at least one credit card. I think I did a segment on identity theft. If I did, go back and watch that. And you can go back and watch the replays of the broadcast. Just register at livingontop.info. Because that was a good one. And one of the things I will tell you is that if you don't have a credit card and maybe you're just using your bank debit card, even if it is accepted as well as credit, you're opening up yourself for potential fraud, and not just the fraud itself, but how you recover from it. Think about it. A credit card, the balance is not due for 30 days. So if someone hacks your credit card, you got 30 days to go back and forth with the credit card provider and get all of that account, those fees or those charges credited. Somebody get into your bank account, You can still work with your bank to get that money put back. However, now you short. If it's a Friday and you're going on vacation, it might take a few days for your bank to replace that money. So just for that alone, and I didn't even tell you, you need it from a credit perspective, but for that reason alone, to protect yourself from fraud, you need to make sure that you have a credit card. And then, like I said, it's 10% of your score. So that's just a way, and this pie chart represents the FICO model. So we talked earlier about the history, who's FICO, Fair Isaac Corporation, those two guys that got together. So that's the FICO model that they put together. For the most part, the classic model breaks down those 5 areas of how our credit is evaluated. Now I want to go and actually break down a credit report itself so you can see how the pie chart actually relates to the information on our credit report. So everybody's credit report, no matter where you pull the credit report from, has these, like, I think it's about 4 different key sections. This is your personal information section. So whenever you're looking at your credit, you want to make sure that this information is accurate. So that's why you need to be watching and looking at your credit on a regular basis. Now, all the way to the bottom right, the position where it says the programmer was hired in 2011, it doesn't matter. Your position, your employment, your income, how many kids you got, all that makes no difference on your score. So that information, you might see it on a credit report, but it actually makes no difference on your score. What you want to look at on your credit, as far as the score, would be addresses. You want to look at the different variations of your name and the variations of your address, okay? But every report will have this personal information section. Let's go to the next slide. All right. This side here talks about the accounts that are in good standing, satisfactory accounts. You need some good to outweigh the bad. If your credit profile, is heavy on the negative and you don't have anything good, well, there's a problem. This is not a seesaw. You don't want it evenly balanced. You actually want to have more positive credit than you do negative. Couple of things I just want to mention about your current accounts. Current accounts that you're paying, whether it's your car, your mortgages, your credit cards, student loans, whatever, that information is typically reported every month. So every month you're going to have your accounts reported. You should see your balances decreasing as you're making payments, okay? And then so the report date and the status date will probably be around the same because it's being reported as the information is being paid. Again, your balances are being reflected, should be decreasing as you are making payments. However, that's not the same on other types of accounts. Go to the next one. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, our next types of accounts are adverse accounts or collections. Let me make a note. Collections don't always have to start off on your credit report. What I mean by that is a collection can start from a creditor that one of your current creditors may be reporting, and then the account goes delinquent. When the account goes delinquent, then it goes into a collection status. So it's either the collection agency is either hired or they sell the debt to them. So when you have a collection or you have a charge-off, which a charge-off is simply an account that also went into delinquent and then the creditor wrote it off on their taxes. Remember the question I answered today earlier on Chat with Chris about, a charge-off and then that turns into an income statement. Some charge-offs do, so some companies will write it off in their books and write it off as debt completely, or some will just write it off on their books, but they keep it as an open debt. So a couple of things about charge-offs and collections that you need to know. Number one, they don't report any updates. So if you're making payments on collections or charge-offs or judgments, liens, anything like that, they actually every month do not report that information. So you've got a $5,000 derogatory debt. You're sending $50 a month. You can take a picture of your credit report and come back and look at it in a few years. It's going to look the exact same way. So those negative types of adverse accounts, are not required to update the statuses. They update when it was open and when it was closed, and nothing really in between. So make sure if you're going to address negative information like those collections, charge-offs, things like that, that you kind of look at them and maybe address them in the smaller amounts that you can knock off sooner. So the more recent and smaller amounts. Let's put that slide back up and I'm going to tell you what I mean. So if you've got collection recovery services and Donovan Wilson and Discover Financial, what you want to do is you want to look at the most recent negative account, and then you want to pay that one first. You want to look at the date that's opened, which is the date all the way over to the right. Look at the open date, and then determine that from how more recent or how recent is this debt to determine what you want to pay first. Okay, not necessarily the highest amount. Again, it'll take a lot longer for you to pay off your higher amounts. So let's keep moving. We got some more stuff to talk about before we end the broadcast. All right, your next section are public records. They're public, which means everybody can find out. So your public records will also be on your credit report. So again, what's credit got to do with it? Everything. So whether a public record is a judgment, a lien, bankruptcy. And you all know I just wrote that book, Credit and Bankruptcy, Rebuilding After the Financial Storm. So bankruptcy is not a dirty word. As a matter of fact, shout out. We're going to be doing bankruptcy seminars here in Maryland next month. So I'll get some information about that on the broadcast, but stay tuned. I'm going to come back at you with my partner, Kimberly Jackson, bankruptcy attorney from the Phoenix Law Firm. And we're so excited. We're going to be doing these bankruptcy symposiums so that people can understand the importance. Well, never mind. I'll tell you about that. Let's stay focused. We can get through this broadcast today, but next month on the 23rd, I think it is, we're going to be doing those. All right. So public records simply, and this is definitely something that is damaging to our credit. So again, whether it's a bankruptcy, which is a choice, or a judgment or a lien, which is not voluntary. That means that someone has taken continued, collection action to come after us for that debt. But that information is negative and will and does affect our credit. Keep in mind, everything is negotiable, though. So even accounts that go into a negative status, whether it's a collection, a charge off, whether it's a bankruptcy, a judgment or a lien, that debt is all negotiable. So don't think just because, someone's garnishing your wages and the account is in a judgment state that you can't negotiate. Everything's negotiable, okay? But a settlement does not mean it's a payment plan. So if you want to settle a debt, you're probably going to have to come up with some money, even if it's a percentage of the overall debt. Don't try to negotiate a settlement and then pay them for the next 5 years. That won't work, okay? So, but everything is negotiable, so you probably can settle some type of debt. Okay, let's wrap this up. We're going to, the next section is your inquiry. So on a credit report, these 4 sections that I've talked about, your personal information section, your positive account section or current accounts, and then you'll have your negative accounts, and then of course your inquiries. So I already told you that inquiries are 10%. So when it comes to your inquiries, basically everything that you apply for could have a negative effect on your score. I've seen anything from 3 points to 40. So don't think that you can just kind of apply for a lot of things. And by the way, for those of you who like to go around in the store, a bad strategy is actually to open up a store credit card, get that tip 15 or 20%, and then once you pay it off, close it. Bad, okay? Because you actually just affected your credit twice. You negatively affected it when you got the first inquiry, and then you are going to negatively affect it again when you close it up. So bad move, don't do it. Just, again, apply for things that you know that you're going to get approved for. And everybody needs some type of credit. So you got to owe somebody something. This is not a debt segment. This is a credit segment. So you're going to need to owe somebody something, but only apply for the things that you pretty much have a good shot at getting. And the authorized user is a great strategy. Now, again, if you're not sure who to apply for, I don't know where my credit is, where should I go? There's a lot of great resources that are out there. Just reach out to me. Go ahead right now and go to creditwithchris.com and register for your no-cost assessment, and I'll be happy to guide you in the right direction. So once we've worked on our credit, understand that credit has a lot to do with everything financial in this country. Then we want to either, we're building it, restoring it, maintaining it. Well, the next slide is really just to remind us that we've got to now protect it. So once you've done all the work to get your credit to, as high as possible, again, a good, comfortable place should be in the upper 700s. Then listen, guys, then you've got to protect it. Protect your credit by protecting your income. So I mentioned earlier, credit is simply affected by our ability to pay. So if we have any credit challenges, it's usually not that we just didn't pay our debts. It's because something happened and we had some income that was, negatively impacted and we weren't able to pay our bills. So we want to make sure that that's the final step in kind of this process to make sure that you're wrapping it up, that you are protecting it. If you're not sure, if you've got gap areas and you're not sure if your credit, if your income is protected, again, a good reason. You may want to reach out to us. We can make sure that we help you to identify any gaps and that you fill those gaps so that you don't have all your good work go to waste. So how bad do you really want it? I love this slide. I think this image says it all. How bad do you really want it? How bad do you want to have and live a life of good credit? If you want to have it bad enough, then you've got to stay, focused and remember to get this information. This broadcast is here just for you. Remember that information or knowledge is nothing without applying actions and getting the best results. So, you got to take your knowledge, apply actions to them in order to get the best results. And remember, if you don't do that, then it's just wasteful information. And I often say that, we can't change our yesterday, but we can change our tomorrow today. So, I want to kind of leave you with that. So hopefully this quick segment has been helpful. I'm trying to give you a little surprise. So give me a minute. I'm going to try to get a surprise to come on and share with us. Again, I mentioned that today is pre-tax day. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is give you some tax tips. So let's go to a quick commercial break and let me get this all set up. And we're right back before we end the broadcast. On the air. This is live TV. And I was going to bring on somebody who was going to give us some last minute tax tip strategies. But you know what? It's the day before taxes are due and she's swamped, quite frankly. So we can't even get her on. She is so busy. But let me just tell you guys this. Just make sure that if you've not done your taxes, and it is good to do taxes early than the year, but if you've not done your taxes, make sure that you at least file an extension. So if you can't get your taxes in, and get them filed tomorrow, make sure that you file an extension. Don't play with the IRS, because from a credit perspective, the IRS, child support, and student loans are the only three types of debt that they don't have to sue you to come get their money back. So we all know that the IRS, the I, the R, and the S, those big guys, they will go into your account, seize your funds, of course, take your returns, and then they can also put liens on your debt. So make sure you don't play with them. If you owe them, if you haven't even filed, just do an extension and make sure that they know you're out there. Okay, but just a couple things. They often say that joke about things that we have to do in life, which is get older and pay our taxes. So sorry I wasn't able to bring a tip, but that's the tip coming from me today, is to at least go and make sure that you either file your taxes by tomorrow or file an extension, and then get yourself together and get your taxes filed. I know I'm one of those, so I got to make sure I take care of my business as well. All right, you guys. Well, it's been a pleasure here with you on Living on Top with Chris Bridges, talking about what's credit got to do with it. Just wanted to drop by and drop a couple of nuggets on you, and I hope the information was helpful. Make sure to connect with me again on livingontop.info. Join our community as well. Make sure that you like our page, Living on Top, on Facebook. And use hashtag LOTCB whenever you're communicating or making notes about us on social media. Okay? It's been a pleasure. I'll see you all next week. Stay blessed and continue to live on top. Bye bye.
I've been waiting on the sunset, bills on my mindset, I can't deny it. Getting higher, higher than my income, income's breadcrumbs. I've been trying to survive. The glow that the sun gets right around sunset helps me realize that this is just a journey. Drop your worries, you are gonna turn out fine. Oh, you turn out fine. Fine, oh, you turn out fine. But you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. You gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. I know it's hard, to remember sometimes, but you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey, 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 hey. I got my hands in my pockets, kicking these rocks. It's kinda hard to watch this life go by. I'm buying into skeptics, skeptics mess with